thanks for joining us on the couch today. We love y'all.
Oh, that wasn't even me today.
Yeah, but I knew she was going to react, so still in control of the situation.
Or so she thinks.
Today, we're in the 50s with our episodes. It's been a year. In that time, we have talked a little bit about relationships. What did we talk about with relationship? Love.
We talked about love, like the miseducation of it.
Yeah.
And where our perceptions about how to love and be loved come from, all these corny movies and terrible songs.
Right. So I would say reference that if you want to go back to more of our conversations around love and like what love means to us and what we look for in love. And then we've also talked about dating. We did an episode on dating, and we've also did episodes about moving on, which included some stuff about relationships. And then in other episodes, we've kind of talked about relationships or referred to them as well, because relationships are a huge part of our lives as human beings. And so today we want to focus more on how do you know if you're ready to be in a relationship, in a committed relationship. So we're just going to have a conversation around that, like what are the signs, and then what are our experiences, and what have we learned in our journey with relationships over time. And so we're sure that every single person listening to this will be able to identify with the topic, because a lot of times it seems like, and if you look at social media, it seems like everybody's trying to figure out what are we? How do I figure out what we are? What's next? I don't really know what's going on, or what should I have to deal with? What don't I deal with? Blah, 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 blah. And personally, I think it all boils down to very simple, easy steps, but they're just hard to actually do sometimes. So
sounds like most of life.
Yeah, like everything, like you know what to do.
So simple, but so profound.
Yeah. So, Carlie, any like backstory about anything with this? I think I just randomly came up with this idea, and it wasn't even necessarily like me going through anything. I just thought about it because we're always talking about relationships, not us, but like people are always talking about relationships. Like everything they talk about, it ends up going back to something about either the opposite sex or about their dating life or whatever. So I think it's due for you guys to get some juiciness.
It is. And I feel like no matter what you accomplish, like people always come back to this regardless. Like I remember I was pissed because I was on one of my group meets and they're like, well, let's get a check-in. You know, you haven't been on here. And I was like telling them about everything, the company and school and traveling. And they were like, okay, that's cool. But like, let's get to what we really want to know. Like, are you dating somebody? And I was just like, ugh.
Yeah, that is interesting. Because when people check in about you, we always get that question. And when I'm back in North Carolina too, if I visit the old place I worked or my old friends, my family doesn't ask much, but sometimes they'll bring it up. They'll just ask like, hey, are you dating anybody? Just because they want to know what's going on. But yeah, you're right. But before people ask me anything about work, it's always like, oh, so are you dating? You about to be with somebody? And I think to a lot of people, that is the peak of their success. Like for them, that's a peak to reach. And so they're kind of putting that on you, I think, when they ask about that. But of course, also, it's still juiciness that people want to hear about, right? Like there's drama and there's passion and all this and that in relationships. And people like talking about it. So
let's get into it. So Lex, are you in a committed relationship?
No, I'm not. Are you?
No, I'm not. And what's funny is...
She answered too fast.
No, I'm not. But it's because I wanted to tell a story about this. So when we prep for episodes, like we'll write down ideas and questions. And I had misread the question on this one. And so I put, I think so, but that was not to this question. I thought you were asking me if I was ready. And I had wrote, I think so. And Lex was going to... She's gonna end me on here, but I
wish somebody would say I think so if you ask them if they're in a relationship. That opens it up perfectly for like the conversation we're about to have though. So for you listeners, are you in a committed relationship? And it's a yes or no question.
Directly, no explanation needed. Yes
and
or no.
If you got a lot of or whatever, then
that's a nah,
continue listening.
Well, how do you define a relationship when someone like asks you?
Yeah, so if somebody asked me like, hey, are you in a relationship? For me, it's just that if it's clear that I'm in a relationship, that means we've had a discussion, like me and this person or people have had a discussion and we're on the same wavelength and the same ideas of expectations and what's going to happen with this thing, what we're going to commit to. So it's clear. If I'm in a relationship, I think that it's clear. What about you?
Same. I think it's clear and defined, but the importance is like it's defined by us. And I like that, like you said, a person or people, because it really is about you and whoever you're in a relationship with. And it's defined in the context of like, these are our commitments to each other. These are our non-negotiables. Like this is what our expectations are for this thing that we are deciding to be in.
Right. And I said that because I was having an interesting conversation also a couple weeks ago with some guys. And they were mentioning open relationship, like just part of the conversation. And thinking about it, like that can be a committed relationship. If I'm talking to the person, they know, hey, I have a date with this person. And like, that's what we're on and we're okay with it. Like, that's perfectly fine. And maybe that's how our relationship may work. In this case, the guys were talking, one of them said like, yeah, they have each other's numbers and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, sound like you winning. But, it just depends on where you're coming from. So for me, if we're clear, if we've talked, communicated, I feel like, okay, yes or no, where you stand with that question. What is your history with relationships? Have you had a lot of them?
I wouldn't say a lot, but I would have called myself a habitual monogamist. Just if I look at different time periods in my life, like I had a high school sweetheart, I had a boyfriend in college, I had a
You had a boyfriend the whole time you were in college?
Not the whole time, but some of it, yes. And then I had a situationship after college.
So is that a relationship?
No, I mean, what is a relationship? It's not a committed relationship.
Okay.
So that's the difference. And then, yeah, like dating and figuring that out now.
So when was the last time you were in a committed relationship?
In college.
In college? Okay. How long was that?
We dated for like 2 years.
Okay. The end of it?
The beginning. The beginning, middle-ish. I was in college for 5 years, and the 5th year was the best year. But it was like right at the beginning, and we broke up like a year or so before.
But did y'all go into college together too?
No.
Or okay.
We met in college.
Yeah, that's like a movie script thing that you see. For me, I had a boyfriend towards the end of college, was my first relationship. And then after college, I was with somebody for a few years. And then when I moved to DC, I started dating somebody, and that turned into a relationship for a couple of years. And I think that's the last time. Because my last one where we said, hey, we'll be in a relationship, but then it was weird for like a month, and then we didn't talk no more. So like, I don't even know. I don't even want to count that. Yeah. And I'm not counting like any situationships in this case, because I think that's the thing that we're trying to unravel, is that if you wanted to be in a relationship, you wouldn't be in these situationships. Or at least that's my take, which we'll probably get to.
Yeah, I'll say we'll get into that.
So when you were in that relationship in college before, or I guess you said high school, but then you changed it. You said college was your real first one?
Well, no, high school. I mean, I definitely had a boyfriend in high school.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay, so when you got into relationships before, like, what was your reasoning? Or like, why were you in the relationships? As far as, and my why is not why were you in the relationship, sorry. My why is, why did you take it to that next level type thing?
Yeah, like in a relationship. So I think in high school, I didn't really have a concept of relationships. And it was like, if I like this person and they like me, like, we're just going to be together. Like, there's not like an in-between thing. And so we dated for like pretty much all of high school. Like, I had the same boyfriend all of high school. And we broke up right before college, but it was because we like cared about each other, and we both like wanted to be in a relationship. And he's a year older, so he went to college to play football and left before I did. And we still dated when he was in college.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I just liked him. And so like I said, I think in high school, that's like the logical next step. Like, you don't, like, if you like each other, you're boyfriend and girlfriend, and you like have a committed relationship. And then drama, if somebody, like, it's a lot of nonsense now that I laugh about it, but I coach middle school volleyball, and it's just so funny to see them do the same things and think about it. Like, they were talking about it the other day, like people they like, and this one girl and this dude dated for like a week, but then like they broke up with each other. It's interesting.
It's always, I think, tough too, listening to younger people talk about relationships, because you want to, in your head, you're like, bro, y'all don't know, like, nothing. But at the same time, you remember when you were in high school, or
couldn't tell me nothing.
You know what I mean? And that is those are real feelings too, you know? And so it is valid, and I think it's more important to have like the conversation around it.
I think it's interesting. You said your first boyfriend was at the end of college. I think it's dope and also interesting that you waited so long to have a boyfriend. So what made you take that to like the next level, like an actual relationship?
I don't even remember the conversation or that transition into it. But I just could identify that this was somebody who really did care about me, and we were such good friends. But looking back, I would say obviously I was not ready for that, and I don't think I was necessarily like the best person in being in a relationship with them. Like we had a lot of fun, but anything deeper beyond like really being vulnerable or communicating and things like that would obviously be progression and really letting them see me. I wasn't really letting people see me still. Or I didn't feel like I could really be all the way myself because he was kind of judgy. Like looking back at it, he's kind of judgy because he was kind of a strict type person himself. And yeah, I did wait very long because I just had no interest in it in high school. I had no interest when people wanted to talk to me, date me, go out with me, do anything. I just didn't. And I had no interest in guys. And I think in college I was probably the same kind of way, but that it just developed.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It sneakily developed because and then I wasn't sexually active. Like I didn't have sex till I was like 23 ish, and that was with my second boyfriend. And so even with that first one too, like you kind of see how it's like, it was more about like a friendship and us spending our time together and being open and being romantic with each other. Actually, let me add that we were very romantic with each other. Like he was one of those blindfold you and like take you somewhere. He made dinner and stuff. And at the time it's really hard for me to even deal with that because I wasn't that kind of cheesy type person. I think I'm more so now, but I just wasn't. And so it was kind of like dealing with somebody who's real extra and somebody who's not very extra.
Yeah.
And so that's where we had our kind of clashes with that.
I think it's interesting looking back at relationships and thinking about like why we got into them or why you weren't interested in that for a very long time or why people are hyper interested in it when they're younger. And one of my line sisters was out here a couple weeks, either last week or week before, and we were talking about how having boyfriends in high school and like male attention was something that we thought like equated love or like back then that we felt we needed. And so that's kind of how we got caught up in that type of thing.
I never felt that.
Yeah. And it's
I never felt like I needed it. And even, and I almost, the one time in high school that I do remember being like, all right, man, you like, I'll be your girlfriend. I remember doing it like, just like that, like, all right. And for 4 days, I avoided seeing that person at school and I avoided answering their calls and stuff. I didn't talk to them for 4 days. And then I called him one day and he was at Taco Bell with his friends. I remember because he said something. I was like, well, where you at? And I was like, yeah, this ain't gonna work. so that's why I didn't even say anything about the high school one. Like it was 4 days of me like not talking to this person. I was like, all right, whatever. I was like, yeah, this ain't gonna work, bro. Because I don't like you. And I think a lot of times we're in relationships or we're arguing or fighting about relationships that you don't actually want to be in because that's why you're fighting it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like you're resisting the shit in the first place or you have problems with the person because you don't like the person. And I didn't like people. I never forced it.
Yeah. I mean, that happens. And I'm glad that you didn't because I feel like I'm the opposite. So in college, the guy had asked me and I was like, nah. And then we were still dating and having fun, college. And he was just like, ask me again. I was like, nah. And third time, he's like, I'm not going to ask you again. Like, and I was like, I mean, I guess. Yeah. And then we ended up dating for a while. And then I was like, like this ain't gonna work.
Yeah, I wasn't even asked. I didn't get to that point. I wasn't dating. So I never was dating. For you being in a relationship most of college, you felt like you were ready for that?
Absolutely not. But I didn't. In hindsight, I can tell you why I did it. But in the time, like I was like, oh, this person really cares about me. Like they're cool. We were really, really good friends. And I was like, maybe the other stuff will come. Like maybe like I'll get that feeling.
So you didn't like them?
I mean, I did. I did like them, but not.
Isn't that crazy thing about you're in a relationship with somebody
exactly,
you don't even like them?
I mean, I like them as a person and as a friend, but now hindsight, what I was doing was not settling, but it was like
time holder.
It was like a time holder, but it was also just like someone who was there when I was about to go through like what were a lot of growth and learning opportunities in my 20s. And it was, somebody to be there to make, so I didn't feel so alone.
To be there in a certain way that your friends can't, you mean?
Not even that. Because I mean, I have friends, but he's like 5 years older. So at the time, like I felt have more life experience. Now I'm not so sure, but
5 years older when you was a freshman in college?
When I was a sophomore in college.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so we were dating, but it was not healthy. I wasn't ready for a relationship. I should have been by myself, but like everything happens how it needs to. And so I'm still trying to learn the lessons from that. But I see that it was just, to have someone there, which is actually kind of sad when you think about it looking back. But I'm like, like it wasn't like that in practice. Like he was a really sweet person.
It wasn't like that in practice.
Like it didn't feel like that back then. This is all hindsight. This is all knowledge and wisdom that I've learned past then. But during the relationship, I didn't understand it.
Well, how did you feel during the relationship though?
A little smothered. Like I needed space. Like I liked him, but he was too.
Oh, so he was the one kind of
overbearing. He was way overbearing.
That's what I'm trying to understand. Because you're saying in hindsight, but I'm like, hindsight to what? Like what?
No. He was way overbearing.
Okay. That's interesting too, because I have always been the chasing kind of person, and not chasing, but like nobody's ever been like overbearing to me, because I can't be around people that are too clingy. I need a lot of space.
Well, that's what I thought.
Except I turn into the person who like, where you at? I want to be there, and I want to be with them all the time.
Yeah, that's normally who I am in a relationship, and so it's funny to be on the opposite side of that and experience it.
Okay. So do you think you're ready to be in a relationship right now?
I am.
Okay, so let's talk about how a person can know, because we'll come back to us, but how can a person know if they're ready to be in a relationship? Like what do you think are some signs for the listener? So now you guys thinking about yourselves, like, first let's say, okay, do you think you're ready to be in a relationship? Yes or no? Answer that for yourself. And now let's go through these signs and like see where you fall with it.
Yep. I would say that you know what you want. I think that is a sign towards like that you are ready for a relationship. Like you're getting clear on, yes, I'm ready to be in a committed relationship, and I'm ready for these things. Like if you're able to kind of articulate that and know what you want and able to say that, I feel like a lot of people struggle with being able to put into words what they want and what they need and what they're willing to give and to meet in the middle.
Okay. So knowing what you want, does that just mean being able to say, I want to be in a relationship?
No, because then I would be like, okay, well, what does that mean?
So what things should I know?
I think that's different for other people. But for me, I know that I, want a partner. I want someone to build a life with. And I want them for the right reasons. Like I'm not looking for them to fill any holes or anything with inside of myself. Like it's just, someone to go along the journey with me, which leads into another sign. We can keep going, but which leads into another sign, which I think is like being whole.
Can I go back to this one though? Because I still have some more on that. Because being whole obviously is a huge one. But going back to knowing what you want. So you're saying understanding what ideas you have for your future, what you want things to look like.
Yeah.
Okay. And so does that mean having that everybody should have like a checklist of, well, I do want this, have these needs, and I want this person to be like this or that?
I don't think so, because checklist in my head makes it seem like you have this list of like non-negotiables, like on the movies. All the women are like, okay, he has to be tall, he has to have a good job, he has to do this, he has to do this, or she or whoever has to do this. And I think that can keep you away from being open to what there actually is out there, but being able to articulate like what you want and kind of what your non-negotiables are. Like I want, like if I'm open for a polyamorous relationship, then the person has to obviously be open to that. Otherwise it's not going to work.
Okay. And knowing what you want allows you to more quickly identify where this is definitely going to be a waste of time, or, okay, I should go forward with this.
Yeah.
Okay. The one thing about knowing what you want, though, is that I think a lot of us lie to ourselves. I think we lie to ourselves a lot.
I agree.
And I think that we say what we want. And I think that what you have is what you're ready for. Not to skip ahead and get too deep into that. Maybe we'll touch it again later. But that also I can know what I want. And people say they know what they want. And people want to be in a relationship. But then that doesn't mean they're ready necessarily. So I think that all these other things still have to like build up upon it for sure.
I think that knowing what you want is the very beginning of seeing if you're ready for a relationship, and that having a clear understanding of where you are and the self-awareness to know, and also what you want. Because I do think people lie to themselves a lot. I also think that people's lists or their checklists or things that they think they want in a relationship are because of what society has told you, or what your parents have, or what somebody else has, and you're like, I want that. It's like that post on the Shade Room. They were talking about like Keisha and Gucci and like how she held him down, and people like, oh, I want a woman that'll hold me down like that. And it's like, okay, well, really, have you really thought about what that looks like for your life?
And also, are you experiencing that? So you can say what you can know what you want, but I think I'm glad you said that, because knowing what you want also means I've done some things to where I do know what I want. Otherwise, you think you know what you want. And so it's also important that obviously we, should be kind on ourselves. We're looking at our relationships in hindsight, and to now really like question yourself about knowing what you want based on the things that you've gone through already. Like, you really might not want that thing, or maybe you're still trying to figure out what you want, which is okay for you to be figuring out, but then maybe still you being in the dating phase versus flipping this into a committed relationship.
Exactly. And we're talking specifically about committed relationships. So that's a big difference. Like dating, that's, trial and error, like figuring out what you like, what you don't like.
Yeah. So keeping that in mind, and keeping ourselves on track too, because I know it's easy to get into everything else with this, but that knowing what you want, that's what dating is for. That's what being around and out is for. And when you know what you want and you're like, this feels good, then okay, you may be more ready to actually commit. And then what's another? I don't know if you want to go back to the whole or next one.
I'll say being whole. And so what I mean by that is you're not looking for, like, you're not at half looking for a half to be another person when you're in a committed relationship. Like, oh, I'm real lonely at night and I just want someone to hold me, so we're going to be in a relationship. Like, that's not healthy. And that's a very base level, like, needy type of answer for that. But it's just just demonstrating like what that can look like. It can also look like, I'm codependent, and so I always date people. This is an example, but I always date people that I need to save and that I need to always do stuff for. Like, if you find your value in what you do for other people in relationships, then you're going to need somebody to constantly save. And then if that situation changes, they're no longer the person for you and you go find somebody else. So it's taking that time to be self-aware, to look at your toxic habits and traits, to heal your trauma and deal with your stuff so that you're aware of it coming into a relationship.
Okay. So how do I know if I'm not whole yet, or if I'm not complete, or like, how do I know, when that's at a point where I'm ready to have a healthy, committed relationship?
I feel like for me, because I don't know if on this journey of like self-love and wholeness, I don't know if there's ever a point where you like, you know what, I'm good. Like, I'm just good. Like, I'm whole in this. Like, because for me, I can always work on stuff. So within myself, I feel like, I am whole, but there's still a lot of things I'm working on. You can always get more money,
but does that mean you have a lot of money?
No, but that's what I'm saying is like, I'll never be, I have this idealized version of myself that I'm still working towards. I'm not there yet, but I'm definitely whole where I am, because I understand my trauma and my insecurities and my little nuances and how they manifest in relationships. I think I can think of like examples in past relationships where I might have projected on the other person or needed them to do things for me to make me feel like okay and whole, and it's coming into a relationship knowing that I already have all of those things and I can make myself happy, and so I'm not relying on somebody else to do that.
If you're dating and you're thinking about, am I ready to take the next step, then what does that feel like, right? Because if we're talking about getting a committed relationships, then right now you're saying you're whole in your dating space. Like, with what y'all are doing now, you feel whole.
Yes. And so was the question?
So that's what the question is. You feel whole in your dating phase, and so now you're ready to take it to the next step. You feel like you're ready because of that. I feel whole in my
single phase. Yeah, like I feel whole in like being single, and like I don't like, it's like being alone but not lonely. Like I'm good, but I feel whole enough in who I am that I'm not looking for someone to complete me, but it's like to accompany me on the journey and to build with. But also like I'm not rushing it, and I don't need it to happen right now. Like I'm okay with building and taking time to do that.
Building the relationship.
Yes.
Okay. I think a sign that you're not ready for a committed relationship is if you're obsessed about it, and if you find yourself becoming the person who, oh man, you had to text me back in 20 minutes, oh, what's happening, and you go into rabbit holes, and oh man, where is he at today? Or oh, I haven't heard from him. Or um, checking his Twitter all day, or pulling up to their job, or all of those things where you're kind of going out of your way to try to figure a person out. I think those are signs that you're not ready to be in a relationship.
Why so?
You're not ready to be in a relationship because you're not even putting yourself first, and you're also trying to control a person, and you're trying to control a situation, and you're just not focused on yourself. And being in a relationship, of course, that's, you know, us. We have a thing, we're focused on us, but that's different than you not letting that person unfold and be who they are, and you see who they are, and you let them do what they do. Because at the end of the day, if you're with somebody and you're constantly having to, hey, do this, hey, do that, change this, and it may not be like you're directly like change, but if you're always complaining to a person, or not complaining because you may be trying to be soft about it because you don't want to offend them or push them away, but if you're always, it's always a thing like, yo, I want more of this, or you're not doing this, or whatever, really that's you wanting to be in a relationship with this ideal or with this other thing, but not with this person, because you're not. Love and relationships are, you care about this person, and that's not who they are. That's not what they're showing you. And so it's not, I don't think it has to be even a spoken thing, or it's not necessarily a spoken thing that you need to be like, well, what are we doing? What If they're not there, they're not there. And that's kind of your answer. Like, and so you're not ready if you're staying in that space with somebody who's not ready, or somebody who's not that person that you care to be with.
That's interesting. It makes me think of the expectations we have on other people. And so it's like, man, this person's always letting me down. It's like, no, you have this expectation of these people in your head, your friends, your romantic relationships, whatever. And the moment they don't meet them, they quote unquote let you down or break your heart or whatever. But it's your idea of what they should be or what you want, as opposed to accepting people as they are.
Yeah. So I think, and maybe this is a different thing that goes along with this, but if you find yourself constantly, not that people can't be better people, like obviously, but if you find yourself constantly fundamental things about them, you have a problem with, or you want more, or want something different, consider that you shouldn't want to be in a relationship with that person. And like, why are you obsessed with being in a relationship with somebody that you really don't think that highly about? And I also think, not to turn this to a whole nother episode, that reflects on you not thinking highly of yourself, or you avoiding relationships because it's you who's emotionally unavailable, not just them. It takes two people to be in a situationship.
Yeah.
That person not being clear with you is also you not being clear with them, because you're scared to like mess up the flow or whatever, right?
Whatever.
Yeah, you're not being clear either. And so I think anytime there's a situation where it feels like kind of one-sided, or you feel too invested and like you're trying to figure things out all the time, that's not a good sign.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That's a self-check.
Yeah, and what does the opposite of that look like? Like if you are ready.
I like what you said about putting yourself first. So we've mentioned it before. It's like, you're like, oh man, this person hasn't texted me. You're sad all day, and all of a sudden they text you, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm happy again. Like that's a self-check time. And so what that can look like is if you're so engrossed in what you're doing every single day, in the moment, with your friends, with your work, with your dreams, they're a bonus. It's like they're like that little extra seasoning on top, you know what I'm saying, that makes it better, but you're not depending on them to make you feel full and happy. I think that that's a great sign, is when you're not obsessive about it, whenever they don't do things, like you don't take it to heart, and it doesn't crush your whole world.
That makes me think too about another conversation where somebody was like, well, talking about trust, and like, do you trust the other person? And he was like, well, what does trust mean to you? Because most people, when they say that, it's trusting that other person to do what you want them to do.
Exactly.
Right? Really trusting somebody is trusting them to unfold and do the experiences and be the person and make their decisions that they want to make. And you trust that they're doing what they need to do for their life. That has nothing to do with me. And so I can be there as a friend. I could not be there at all. I could be there as a situation. I could be there as a relationship, whatever. But I need to make sure that that's in alignment with trusting them to be themselves.
I love that. And I think it's so beautiful when you give people the opportunity just to unfold
Yeah.
and become who they're supposed to be. Like, that's actual love, is just letting them grow. It's like, you know, those like corny love memes that are on Instagram. And there's one of this old man and he's holding a flower in his hand. And it's like just like letting people grow instead of like picking them and trying to take the flower home. It's going to die and you're squeezing it in your hand. And so it's giving them the opportunity to be who they are. And you also to not take everything personally.
And then kind of going along with the being obsessed, just with dating period, right? If we all have friends who are like this, or you see it online with certain people, and it's like you're always, everything you do revolves around men or women or whatever, right? And it's like, you're, oh man, I'm putting this dress on for this, or I'm going here for this, or I'm saying these types of things, and I want to go on dates, or I'm going on a bunch of dates. And I think that could be a sign that you're not ready. Maybe that's a sign like you're learning yourself. So I'm not saying there's anything wrong with wanting to explore and date and all that, but I think that's necessarily not a good sign that you're ready to be in a relationship, which is what a lot of people are saying, like, oh, wish I had a boyfriend, I want to be in a relationship. If you are in a place where you need it, and I think if you need it, you're not ready for it.
Yeah, because you're coming from a place of lack other than a place of fullness and abundance. And I think that's always an issue. Like, no matter what situation you're coming at it from lack, like that's going to be an issue, and you're in the losing situation.
Like have you ever noticed that too? Like, every time you're trying real hard to do something, or to make something happen, or get something, or something with a relationship or a person, it just gets harder. And then the moment you let go, the moment you stop trying and like stop needing it so much, it lines up. And it's like, because everything I'm doing isn't or centered around this. You're living your life, and then like it flows better.
You're giving people space to meet you in the middle.
Yeah, and that too. And like, so you're not over investing when you do it that way too. And you're getting people who want to be around you, and it's not you trying to force yourself in every situation, I think.
Yeah, like forcing anything is not a good look, especially when it comes to relationships. I think that if you're trying to force anything, like, it's definitely a sign that you need to step back and do a little self-check-in.
Yeah. And I think I'm pausing because I was making sure that I'm thinking about relationships as opposed to dating with this. But I think another sign, and this was probably an obvious one, but I think a sign that you may be ready to be in that committed relationship is if you do have consistent FaceTime or time with that person. And if it's like and that time with that person doesn't have to be like super regular. Like, it doesn't have to be like we talking in the morning, talking in the evening, talking in the afternoon, but that you have your understanding of like what your space is, and that you're consistent in that, whatever that is for you guys, I guess.
Yeah. And I think it has to be intentional.
Yeah. Yeah. Intentional time commitment.
Yeah.
Is important. So on the other side of that, if I'm a person who's like, I just, some weeks I might answer your text, or some weeks I might want to call you or talk to you, and then some weeks I'm totally disappeared, then I'm probably not ready to be in a relationship. And it's only worse if that person is trying to force that out of me, because then it's like, bro, I'm showing you like I don't have the time. And so now if you're kind of trying to force it, if I give in, whether I give in or don't, it's like, bro, why are you trying to force me into something that I'm not, that I can't deliver on?
Yeah.
So it's a setup for failure if you're not like already consistent.
Which puts you and the other person in a terrible situation, because now you're being let down, and now they feel resentment because you're upset with them all the time.
Which we usually from the other side talk about, if you're starting to feel resentment, you're probably that person who's trying to force it.
Exactly. I think that's also a really important thing, is having like feeling safe enough to communicate those things with people. And so you might not be in a relationship if you don't feel safe enough for the other person to see you for better, for worse.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is it's easy to show up to a date and always have my best face on.
Yeah.
If I know I see you, you know, once every other week and we have great conversation. Oh, work is amazing. My friends are great. My mom is good. But like when you're in a committed relationship and you're committed, you're inevitably going to see some sides of the person that might not be great. They might be triggered. They might be having a bad day. And so when you're safe, when you feel safe enough to be vulnerable and to be open with them, with where you are and with how things are going, and it's like a brave space for both of you. It has to be reciprocal.
That's very important. And that's something that even for years you can be with somebody, be with as in like dating or whatever you're doing. You can be with somebody for years and not show them who you are. Like I actually was just talking about this morning with somebody where it was like, yo, like I'm realizing now, like even with my finance guy, my credit guy, with my friend that I was talking to, like, yo, like I could be so much more open. And I love how like we have so much better quality of conversations because I'm trying to be more open, and it's like, yo, like everything's actually out there, so I feel comfortable where I've never been like that before with a lot of people. And just thinking about how like there's times you've been in relationships or not relationships, let me take that back, dating the person or with the person for years or time, especially if it's like long distance, something like that too, where every time you get together it feels great. And that person may have never seen your hair wrapped or you know what I mean? Like they don't know what it smells like when you go to the bathroom. Like you said, they've only seen what you want them to see. And that's something to consider is if at any moment, like if you wouldn't answer the FaceTime and you just woke up, then maybe it's not quite there yet. Or maybe that's something for you to challenge yourself on. Why do you feel like you're not showing yourself or showing your full self? Not to say you should be 100% guard down, you know, from the jump. But when we're talking about getting into a committed relationship, what you're agreeing to is more of the same of what you are, but with an understanding to it. Essentially, that's how I look at it. And we can talk about that. But if you're not ready to show them who you are, then what is this?
Exactly.
Who is he dating? Who is he in a relationship with?
Exactly. And it makes me think about that TV show, like The Wonderful Miss Maisel or whatever. I've only watched like an episode or two. But she literally waits till he falls asleep on the TV show and then gets up and goes and washes her face and does her hair makeup, takes off her eyelashes, curls her hair, wakes up before he does, takes out her curlers, puts on makeup, and then goes and lays back down in bed. And it's like, oh, good morning. So he has no idea who he's married to in real life. And I'm just like, that would be so exhausting to have on this face, to have to be this person in all of the different spaces you operate in every day, and then have to come home and still not be able just to let it go.
And so what does it feel like when you can just be open with somebody? Like
it feels I was about to say, there's another word, but like safe, good. It feels
being open with them,
like a relief. Yeah. Like I feel like I'm a pretty open person. In general, like an open book. People have questions, like I don't mind answering, but like in a romantic situation, that was always a little harder for me because it's this fear of like being unloved or people leaving, like abandonment, like different, you know, traumas and the way things manifest and dealing with those. But whenever you do feel seen, like truly seen by somebody, it's one of the most beautiful experiences ever. It's like, oh, like you see my soul, like you see past all this other stuff and you see me, and it's really special.
And so going along with that, are you showing yourself to somebody? Because if you're not, then what are they agreeing to? And do you feel like you see the other person and you may have opportunity to, but may not be because you're too focused on something else, or they may have their guard so high that you don't really know them all the way. And so maybe you spend more time getting to know each other, which I think is fine. I think there's no amount of time that's like, oh, you should be doing this by this time. None of that stuff. It's really like, how do you feel? It's all self-check, really. How do you feel about these people that you're dating, or this person that you're dating, or the person that you say you like? Like,
can I also say I think that you might not be ready if you have a really strict timeline for how things have to go for your life. And I'm not saying you shouldn't have a plan and you shouldn't like, oh, you know, these things. But if you're like, well, if he or she doesn't propose, you know, after a year and a half or whatever, then like we're not together, because you might just be doing it more for convenience and for your plan, and just being honest with yourself about that.
So it's like the wrong motives.
Yeah.
Again, for being in a relationship. Yeah, check your motives with all of this. So going back though, about us being ready then. So for you guys listening, this week, let us know, screenshot us or send us a message and let us know how you feel about it. Like, do you feel like you're ready, having listened to some of these signs, or, being a part of the discussion, or do you feel like you're not necessarily ready? Carlie, earlier you said that you do feel like you're ready.
I do.
So what does that mean? What does it mean to be ready for a relationship, but also you're not in one right now?
It means that I think I'm in the healthiest place I've ever been with myself. And like knowing like my triggers and my trauma and how I deal with people and the things that I struggle with, and being ready to be vulnerable and be seen with someone that I trust, who, builds that trust with me and that foundation, and, ready to build. Like I'm not rushing at all. I don't have a timeline. I'm not on a clock or any of those things. I just feel like I'm open to having a partner. Whereas before, it might, like in the situationship, it might have been something I felt I needed, or that it was time for, or that I really wanted to happen, but it just wasn't happening the way that I wanted it to. And now I'm just kind of open. It's like I'm good without it, but I think it would be, a bonus to all of the amazing things that I'm doing.
And then just to slightly change the question, because I think it does yield a total different answer, is that, do you want to be in a relationship right now? Because you're right. Like at the beginning when you said, are you ready? And I was like, well, I think if you're ready for it, like the things you're ready for, the things you have are the things you're ready for. And I do still stand by that.
I agree.
However, to say you're ready because of you, that makes total sense, because all you can be in control of is you, right? Yeah. So you can say, I'm in the healthiest place I've ever been, which makes me in a better space for a relationship. Completely valid. Now, do you want to be in a relationship? If somebody, or if it's valid, tell me if it's not valid or not, but if somebody that you care about right now hit you today and was like, Carlie, like, let's talk about the next step, what would you say?
I would.
You would what?
I would be in a relationship.
You would say, let's talk about it. And
let's talk about it. Let's figure out what that looks like for us, and learn as we move forward. Like setting a foundation. I think I'm at that point.
Okay. And what keeps us from, if you want a relationship, if you're dating somebody, and if you want to be in a relationship, what keeps us from not moving forward?
I think there's a lot of things. It could be circumstances. It could be, and people be like, well, if it's meant to, I'm kind of under the thing, like, if it's meant to be, it'll work out. And so if we keep walking down this path, like, we'll get to where exactly we need to be, or we won't, but that will still be exactly where we need to be. I think that things that keep people, I can't answer for everybody.
What's the difference between, okay, I want to be in a relationship. What's the difference between things work themselves out and a person not like standing for what they want and their needs? You know what I mean? Like, what's that balance then?
I think that's
if you want to be in a relationship, do you feel like you should express that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so, and I think that would be something like that you go into dating with, like letting people know, like, hey, I'm actually, ready to be in a relationship. Like, I'm looking, not like the first date, but eventually in conversations, you do talk about what you want, and I think it's better to be upfront about those things, because they have the opportunity to be like, actually, like, I'm just chilling right now, and so this is more casual, and so expressing that to people. But I think the balance here is, I'm open for a relationship versus like, I want one and I need to be in one right now. Because, okay, well, why do you need it right now?
Well, not need. I'm not talking about anything.
But
also
anything. Want. So like, if you're dating like a couple people and you have one person, you're like, I would like to be in a relationship with that person. That person's like, maybe I'm not right now, but maybe here in a little bit. And you're just like, well, I just want to be in a relationship, so I'm going to go be in a relationship with somebody else. And so I think that's a very difficult question to answer, because everybody's situation is a little bit different, but you have to figure out.
No, you answered it though. Because my question is like, what are you doing if you want to be in a relationship? And you said like, you go to them and you talk to them.
Oh yeah. I think you talk to them, and just be open and honest, but not like giving ultimatums or anything like that, and just being open to however they respond and whatever they say too. I think that what helps a lot of times is having communication up front. So you kind of know what you're getting into before you get into it with them. So before you actually start dating and catching feelings and building stuff with people, you know where their like end game really is.
It sounds like you're kind of speaking to boundaries a little bit, and we didn't talk about that by term name, but if you have particular boundaries in place to where, for example, maybe you're not physical with this person yet, or maybe you're like not going out of your way to like get them a birthday gift or whatever it is. I think that's kind of a big part of what you're saying, is that whatever you're doing, you should be like okay with it. But if you have your boundaries in order, I think that there is no feeling of like rushing it or whatever, because what's happening is only what you're allowing to happen.
Exactly.
But if there are certain needs or wants that you have that are not being fulfilled here, then also like, are you still going with the flow of that, or are you going with the flow of something that does feel good?
And to that, I would say, because I think this is where the gray area gets into like situationships and things. But for a committed relationship, like, are you honoring yourself like with where you are? Are you honoring yourself and your needs with where you are? And that's a good check-in to honestly like sit there and think about, because you don't want to just go with the flow. Like, I mean, if it feels good, like that's cool to go with the flow. But if you know that you actually want something and that person has been clear, adamant that they're not willing to or ready to or whatever to give you what you feel like you're ready for and what you really want at this moment, like, is it honoring yourself to stay in a situation where what you want isn't being served? And then maybe reevaluating.
Reevaluating your investment or your participation there.
Are you ready to be in a relationship?
I am, for the same reason that you said, in that I can take way more ownership and responsibility of myself and my decisions, and in a much healthier place where I'm not trying to control other people. I'm not pressed about other people, and I'm letting things that make sense happen. And if it's something I don't like, then I'm no longer there. And if it's things that I like, then that's what I can continue. And when I say not like, I don't mean like as soon as they do any little thing, like that means you're out. But like for being in a committed relationship, like, no, I don't have to deal with anything I don't want to deal with. Like nobody does. And so I don't feel pressed about that. And if if I'm dating somebody, or if I'm really into somebody and they ask me, like even months ago or a year ago, and they asked me about being together, I would hesitate, because now, man, I kind of just like the idea, but I'm like nervous now. Like, sometimes you get something and you're like, whoa, hold on. I don't know if I really wanted that. But now I know that it would be different. And then I'll be able to communicate, well, wait, let's talk about like, what does that mean for us? And if it's not right, then it's like, well, let's just do what we're doing. Or, let's not do that right now type thing. But I think that it's also important for people as a sign to recognize and to know that putting a title on something changes nothing.
Nothing.
Which is why I keep saying what you're doing is what you're going to have. And so I think too many times we talk about and we push being in a relationship because what we want to push is getting a different behavior. And you want to push somebody changing. And you want to push that now your expectations are valid. Which, okay, cool. But putting husband on that person doesn't mean the next day, like now they call you all day, or you know what I mean? Like now they stop doing whatever they was doing when you were like, well, we need to be together. Maybe you'll stop talking to other people. Like, probably not. Like exactly. What we're doing now, you need to be okay with what we're doing now. And that conversation about next steps then includes like, well, maybe whatever else you kind of want or you want them to be aware of, whatever. But like fundamentally, what you're doing is what it should continue to be. And that tells you like, if you need to be okay with what you have. You be okay with your relationship before you then try to like put a title on it.
To force it to level up. Because putting a title is not going to make that
Yeah, that's not
communication
doing
level up.
anything.
It's not going to help that trust. It's really building that with that person and believing them when they show you who they are, not who you want them to be, not who you get a glimpse of every 6 months or every year or whatever, but like who they are day in and day out, and letting people be whoever they are in your life. Like, yes, you have standards and boundaries, and if they're not meeting them, then they shouldn't be your person.
Yeah, I would agree on that. Anything else on that?
As I say, no, I think that those are all of our signs. Whenever y'all screenshot or reply to us, if you feel like you are ready and it's something that we didn't discuss, or if you feel like you aren't ready and these are the reasons why, or maybe it's not even something that you're thinking about right now, and that's cool too. But I just kind of want to hear y'all's thoughts about it too. We are really trying to think specifically about committed relationships, because I feel so often we do get caught in the situationship dating, like not being able to explain it, and then there's just a bunch of odd conversations that happen, and so it's like figuring out actually what that looks like, how it starts with us, and then how to proceed forward into that like healthy relationship.
And if you're feeling kind of uneasy about relationships, then look at yourself and start with yourself and why are you doing what you're doing, knowing yourself, because that's the first sign that we said, and maybe there's still some discovery there for you to do.
And know that you don't have to be perfect. Like when I'm saying I'm in the healthiest place, that doesn't mean I've got everything together. I'm just aware of it and able to have those conversations. And so keeping that in mind.
Okay. And this week, our question for you as well is, does jealousy have value in driving humans to improve themselves, or is it purely a negative emotion?
Oh, that's a good question. I think jealousy is a negative emotion. I think that you can look at people who might have something that you don't have, or might have achieved something at a higher level or done something and be inspired. But when you're jealous, in my head, that means like you covet, like you just want what they have, and they're a different person than you. And so instead of achieving whatever that is in your lens, in your lane, in your life, you just want what they have. And I don't think that can ever be positive.
Okay. And then I would say jealousy does have value in driving you to improve yourself, because if you see something and you do better, then you improved yourself. So that just because of that. So I wouldn't say it's purely negative, just like there's lots of bad people who can do a lot of good things. But I think that at the end of the day, being motivated by jealousy means that you got a lot of load on your shoulders, and you're probably living pretty heavy and like not living your best mental life anyway. But I think there's value, like you can get value out of it. If it drives you, it drives you. There's a lot of people who are driven by negative emotions or getting back at somebody or whatever it is. And it's like, that's not a good emotion, but you're also making moves. So kudos for now.
Kudos for making moves.
Yeah.
Figure out how to let go of the negativity.
Yeah, let that go, fam. Alrighty. Hit us up with any questions. Thanks for joining us on the couch today, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.